Hi, everyone, and welcome to From Waterloo to the Alamo. I'm your host, Traci Wilson, and today we have Peter DuFrene and Shane Lekwa. They are with RVi Planning and Landscape Architecture. Well, Peter, Shane, I'm so glad to have you guys here today.
Thank you.
I'm really interested to kind of hear what you guys do because it is a little different than what I think people think of when they think of landscape architecture. Because I'm thinking, oh, what can you design for my front yard or my backyard? But that's not what you guys do. So why don't we start? Let's start with just each of you individually. Peter, why don't you tell me a little bit about your journey and a little bit of your background?
Sure, absolutely. So I have been in Austin now for 20 years. It's my second stint here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a Hurricane Katrina refugee. I'm originally from New Orleans.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I grew up, my dad was a land surveyor, so I have this technical background, and he was also an artist and a drawer, artist in drawing. And then my mom was a painter. She liked to paint. So I found my way through to landscape architecture because it really has this holistic sort of artistic and technical side. And that's
Seemed like a natural fit with kind of.
it did. And I didn't know what a landscape architect was, to be honest with you, when I started this, but I took an intro class in college and it kind of just like, this is the thing. And so I did that. And I won't say when college was, but I've been here for
You don't
20
have
years,
to,
but I wasn't
yeah.
here when RVi was founded.
Yes, yeah. And then you made your way to
Yes.
RVi. Yes, that's awesome. Okay,
That's
so
right.
Shane, what about you? Tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, well, I'm an Iowa boy, so a lot like Peter, I sort of found my way into the profession. I always had an interest in art and drawing and architecture specifically. I thought, growing up in a small town in Iowa, there's no master plan communities. There's landscape architecture is rose bushes and
Yeah.
flowering shrubs and whatnot. So it wasn't until I got to college that I even knew that you could make a profession out of that. And as I mentioned, I sort of started in architecture and then realized that I had just as big of an interest in the overall space and how things come together and how you can combine all these different things and look at things in a bigger way. So landscape architecture and planning was really, it just kind of drew me in. I'm a bit of a rolling stone. I grew up in Iowa and then moved to Scottsdale, Arizona, and Boulder, Colorado, New York City, Southern California, and was drawn here to Texas for A, opportunity, and B, my wife's a native Texan. And I think as soon as we got married, it was destined that we would be
Here in
living in Texas.
living in Texas.
And Austin, I feel fortunate to have lived in great places, and Austin is another one. I feel like I can check the boxes of all the cool places to be in the country.
But you ended up in the best one.
Absolutely.
A little biased, but
Absolutely, positively.
Well, RVi is known, I guess I would say it's known for its legacy of placemaking, right? So for listeners who may not be familiar with you guys, how would you describe the firm's mission and design philosophy?
Yeah, I think it centers around human condition. I mean, when you like I mentioned, the holistic sort of the genetics of a landscape architecture or to look at things from a holistic point of view. And all of our planners and at least in our office are trained as landscape architects. So it allows us to be technically savvy, understanding, the technical aspects of a project, but also what does it take to make a place and to understand what the land is telling us, whether that's a geologic feature or a connection to the outside, outside of the boundaries of the project or what is the land telling us it wants to be and how it wants to be developed. To me, that's been the philosophy of RVi is just, we're telling stories. We've been telling those stories for 43 years at RVi, and I think that legacy has been. A lot of our projects are still viable and relevant today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would sort of layer on top of that like we started talking about, it's not just landscape architecture or planning, but part of our mission is to bring the whole thing together. We've got different architectural products or different levels of communities. We've got multifamily, we've got single family, we've got density stuff, we've got parks, we've got recreation, we've got civil engineering, we've got all of these things that come together to make a place. It's not just we get to draw something and, oh, this is cool. The economics have to work. So part of RVi's mission and what we do, I think, pretty well is get all of those stakeholders involved and try to figure out what's going to make this place special, what's going to make this place unique. Obviously, if you're looking for a home, we're talking communities specifically, you got lots of choices, right? Price point's going to drive it. Location, how close are you to work, and schools and all that stuff are going to drive it. But we really believe that some of our communities stand the test of time because we've created something special or unique there. You go to it and you feel a certain way. A lot of times people can't even necessarily describe what that is. They're like, I like this one better than this one. So, you know, and a lot of that falls back on some of those designs and how you put all those pieces together and how you orchestrate it. And as Peter mentioned, how you kind of craft the story about why would you want to be here versus there. That's, and you know, it's interesting. RVi has really sort of expanded, you know, started here in Texas and have expanded all across the South. So what we're real excited, our mission hasn't changed, but our lens has. Like we have all these new and talented people from different locations with expertise that can say, oh, that's really great, but have you thought about this? Or have you seen this is being done in a different way over here? Yeah. And obviously Austin is, you know, growing so fast. We're bringing people in from East Coast, West Coast, South, Midwest. And so I think that's all that opportunity kind of blends. Yeah.
Well, and explain to people too. I mean, landscape architecture is, I mean, you have to be very well versed in. I mean, it's you, like you said, you made a career out of it, degrees. What was both of y'all's degree in? Is it an actual landscape architecture degree?
Yes,
correct?
There's
yes.
Not every college offers that discipline. Some colleges just offer it as a graduate program. But yeah, there's a degree and a license in landscape architecture to practice that profession.
And that's important. I just want to make sure people understand that it's not just, oh, we're just really artistic and really can see visions and we can just design a community. No, it's a big deal because you want someone who knows what they're doing when it comes to landscape architecture and specifically planning master plan communities, like pretty much a lot of what you guys do. I remember my one of my girlfriends at Baylor, she wanted to do interior design, but at Baylor it was an architecture program.
Different.
Wasn't necessarily, I mean, they made it interior design classes go hand in hand in it. And I'll never forget, she was one of the only people that still knew how to do CAD. And you learned CAD all throughout college. But it made her so valuable because nobody really, you know, back when we graduated, no one really still knew how to do that. So it is interesting because out of all places, Baylor had an architecture program. I mean, I love Baylor. It was great. But she wanted to do interior design. So I always laugh about it. But it was a very unique skill set. So I think it's important for people to understand that you guys, it's an actually curated degree, specialization. You have to have all of these things in order to do what you guys do.
When Peter and I went to school, and different schools have a little bit different criteria, and they're kind of trying to uniform that a little bit more. But it was a 5-year program. Like you had to go 5 years because that had extensive amounts of studio time where you're actually, you know, that would almost be like thesis time and other disciplines, but that was constant. So you would have like a 4-hour class where you were in for 4 hours working on a problem, drawing it, figuring out, doing calculations, doing all that stuff. So the duration and the intensity of that stuff kind of said, yeah, you got to be here for a little bit longer to be able to get this degree.
Well, it's kind of like those 5-year accounting programs. I mean, same thing. It's important, and you got to know what you're doing if you're doing the kind of business y'all are doing. But so we all know Central Texas is probably one of the fastest growing, you know, places out there. From your perspective, what are the biggest opportunity and challenges facing planners and developers today, especially in our region of this continued growth?
Yeah, that's a tough question.
I know,
There's a lot of challenges out there specifically right now. Right now, water is a huge challenge, land cost, regulatory challenges. I mean, if you talk to some of our clients, I mean, there's no shortage of challenges to get a development to what they call pencil, right? Obviously. especially with some affordability pressures, right? So the opportunity, or maybe I guess the challenge to the people in that group is, maybe expectations need to change on returns or what they can sell their land for. But, people have patient money if they own the land from, inheritance or
Right.
whatever. And that's a lot of the master plan communities are a result of some kind of ranch that's changed hands in some way. So, yeah, I mean, somebody didn't really have any skin in that piece of land, that they can wait until the cows come home.
Sure.
No pun intended.
Right, right.
But it's really hard for that deal to pencil when you stack on traditional lot layouts and everything like that. And so that's where the regulatory could become an opportunity, I think, if especially some of the outlying municipalities, people want what they've already seen, kind of, 50 foot, 60 foot, 70 foot, 80 foot lots. But it's hard to get the density with all the other headwinds that developers are challenging or running against, and get the density high enough and still leave room to tell the story of that land, with a trail or an amenity center or an open space, or the things that make it a project somebody wants to be in and for a long time be in. So I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean,
there's a lot of challenges.
Yeah.
Hello, my name is Matthias Braganza, General Sales Manager at Mack Height Ford Lincoln, your #1 Ford dealer in Central Texas. We are here for all your automotive needs: Ford, Lincoln, pre-owns, all year makes and model. If we don't have it, we'll find it. You won't find anybody that will work as hard as I will to earn your business. Thank you for making us #1 in Austin, Texas.
Well, I mean, just from let's
Right.
say a residential standpoint, let's say a builder goes out and buys a piece of land, builds a house, and tries to, want to sell it for whatever their profit and margin is. One of the things that we always can say is a pretty constant: if you can get the dirt cheap or cheaper, that's where you can extend your margin. So really, starting with the value of the dirt is huge. I mean, I feel like that does, transcribe into master plan communities, but that's what's hard right now, is everything's so expensive.
It definitely is a huge part of the master plan community. But I think what a lot of people don't realize too is that generally in those master plan communities, the municipality that they're either annexing in or already in maybe don't necessarily have the capacity to handle that. So there's what a lot of people don't understand is there's really huge infrastructure costs. When I say huge, 15, 20, $40 million infrastructure costs that somebody has to pay for before they sell a single one of those units. So there's a carry cost, obviously, to that. Time and money, that whole equation plays into things. And then, there's a bit of uncertainty too with the regulatory process that Peter mentioned. When cities and municipalities are trying to do the right thing, right? They're trying to push to something that's going to work. I think one of the issues with, and a bit of the challenge, is that there's this tendency to try to come up with a one-stop solution, that this works.
Right.
And, due to those complexities, due to the water, the land, the cost, the location, all of that, there really needs to be a variety of situations. And you can build that in with stuff like PIDs and specific documents, but that is another layer of time that adds on to how long it takes, and will it get approved, and you get a thumbs up from the city council or sideways, and it's is this going to happen? So all of those are pressures that go back to the developer. But opportunities, you mentioned that as well. We have one of the strongest economies, maybe arguably in the world, that's certainly in the United States, and that's drawing growth. People are coming here. I don't think they're going to stop coming here anytime soon.
Yeah.
So that's an opportunity, because people, again, we kind of go back to that. People from different places, they're used to different things. So maybe a little bit more density starts to happen in some of these areas because they're moving from East or West Coast and they're used to that. Again, that's not the one-stop solution, but just the fact that you have people coming in with different ideas, and municipalities are getting people from different locations. So there's a constant sort of discourse or discussion about, well, how do we do this? And I always look also at, we have this unique, it's unique right now in terms of we have all these case studies, right? What did Denver do in their growth period? What did LA do in their growth period? What did Oklahoma City do in their growth period? You can, we're smart enough now to be able to sort of take those things and go, okay, this really did work and this really didn't work. We shouldn't necessarily be going down that path again.
Right. Well, and it's also like the data stands for itself. So it's kind of like, what is it? Like, what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. So
of course.
The same goes for that.
Yeah, you mentioned land costs too, and I think there's potential opportunity in like several years ago. I think I remember the GLO had some land that they were offering up at a price, or there's a municipality or a county or something that has some land that's in prime developed area, but it's not slated, or maybe the reason it's reserved is not pertinent anymore. So maybe, public-private partnerships is an opportunity to get the land costs down so that, something can be built. I mean, Miller is a good example of a successful one, and that could be scaled up and down, or, changed to, it doesn't have to all look like Miller, but public-private partnerships can, wear a lot of different
facets of it. Yeah. Well, how do you think, how are y'all approaching growth in cities? I mean, clearly Austin, but like Hutto, Lockhart, and the surrounding areas with the surge and the need for master planned communities and mixed use development?
Yeah, I think we're approaching that. It's all those areas are specifically unique, and with the community requirement or the buyer requirement, the municipal requirement, how do those things fit together? And as we kind of keep coming back to, like, what's the special story of the place? One of the things that we talk about in our office a lot is you can't necessarily take what we've done in Austin and just plop that down. You can do that. And sometimes that happens and sometimes that's desirable. So more typical residential style master plan community may be what's needed, but what we're seeing a lot of, and you see that even in, all of the surrounding towns, Georgetown, like the bigger ones before you get to the Huttos and the Buddhas and stuff, those places are kind of going back and retooling their plan to say, we need place. We don't want to be a bedroom community that just has residential units where everybody gets out and drives across the city line or takes your tax-based money and spends it somewhere else, and all we're providing is housing. So even those, whatever you want to call them, second, third tier outlying communities are saying, we're gonna build something, but we need to also include some of those services and base services and desires. Obviously fire and schools and all that stuff is going to get baked into that because it has to, but also, what about the restaurant? What about the park that people really want to go to, not the leftover little piece? So really thinking about how even those smaller, tertiary communities start to take the elements of a larger community and add more to it. So it's almost like there's got to be a few more ingredients in the thing.
Yeah, well, to make it livable and make people desirable, right?
Yeah, and you live in Austin, traffic is a real deal. So the idea that you don't always have to leave your neighborhood to get everything, that goes back into getting grocery stores involved, and really a lot of the stuff that we see is more geared towards how can you provide stuff for that community that keeps life in that community, and not just a bedroom and you go out for everything else.
Yeah, that's very true.
It's been a big focus.
It's probably unique too with each city that you're in.
Absolutely.
But so are you seeing priorities shift in your design? Like whether it's the walkability, green space, flexibility in land use? I mean, you kind of touched on it, but I feel like that is changing because a lot of people do want to live, play like where they are, Yeah,
it's a hard equation to balance because the density and the land costs and some of that connectivity. I mean, of course we always aim to make those connections internally and to externally, and we were talking before about a project. The most projects are most successful when they connect to the broader outside of the bounds of that particular project. But the connectivity internally just needs to be the priority, and not just connectivity for connectivity's sake, but destinations. Is there a commercial destination at the front? It used to be when we design a master plan community, the tradition, if you drive around and see some of the older ones, it was a commercial reserve in the front. For a while, you're driving through the commercial reserve to an amenity center in the middle of a traditional master plan community.
I think of like Rough Hollow. Like that's like a perfect example of a huge master plan community.
And then now I think the trend, or kind of what we're seeing, is some of those amenity dollars are being rolled into a commercial destination that connects to a neighborhood, so that there is that potential to work. Maybe there's some vertical mixed use in the front that kind of first initial phase or half phase happens, along with some rooftops, and there's a place to go. It's built around a creek or some kind of other destination. So it's not the rooftops before retail, I guess, was kind of always the way it has been, and to a certain extent. I'm not saying this is for every project, but there are certain projects that have an innate or inherent destination that commercial and the residential piece can take advantage of.
Well, every place is different. I mean, it really depends on the community you're serving. If you're in I think of because I'm there all the time with just sports and whatnot, but like I mentioned Rough Hollow, like what they have is they have the master plan community, they have the amenity center, and then you can have the yacht club where you can go do the boating. And now that they've built the new middle school, and then they have the sports complex, which is now there. I mean, it works for this community because we don't have anything like that. So it's definitely something that was smart, that was eventually going to be done, but it depends on the community you're serving and the surrounding areas, right?
Sometimes you have built-in proximity. Sometimes you have to build that proximity in to the project.
I feel like for you guys, there has to be that level of knowing the community you're going into, what's around you, who are you serving? Is it young families? Is it a good elementary school? Good school district, etc.
Yeah, as I think we were maybe talking a little bit before we got started, it's if this is 2,000 acres, right, a master plan community, we always start our mapping is this. It's like, okay, you're here, great schools here, economic centers here, the river is over here, the ballpark's over here. So what do you have already in place that you can share? What's missing in that whole piece? So part of the shift for a long time, it was like sort of community or neighborhood centric. What is this specific group of people going to want and need? Obviously that still drives a lot of it, but more and more of our developers are saying, okay, that's great, but if we can provide a need that expands out and gets other people coming into the neighborhood, whether it's for retail or whatever, because there's some rules of thumb of retail of how many rooftops you need and whatnot, and that's not always going to be met there, but that need might still be there. So one of the trends is we're seeing people thinking more a little bit, beyond your border, if you will, to say, how does this fit into the bigger context? More concern about that than maybe there used to be. We keep up with, market studies and ULI trends and RCLCO and all those people, and open space and trails is still like, everybody still wants that, but even above
pools in a lot of cases.
Even above pools and
exposure to nature, but nature is up for interpretation. But to piggyback on what you were saying, like the Vibe Trail and the the Great Springs Trail, all those trail connections, when we're working on a lot of those too, but they all go through potential master plan communities that they're paying attention to, that they want to dedicate maybe some of their land to be part of that connection, so that they can offer that, sell that as part of what their community is all about. And that's an easy sort of spreading the liability or the cost, because it's part of this regional thing, but that they're making a connection to it, so it's a win-win.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, and I can tie everything back to real estate, but like when you're in a home and you're with family, I would say majority of my memories are either playing in the backyard or playing in the park down the street, or getting on the bike with the neighbor kids, and you would ride to the park or you
Yeah.
would go down the trail and you would whatever. So, I mean, that is a really big sense of, it builds a sense of community, but also just with, if people are moving in with families, it does make a big difference, right? Of what's livable and what's desirable and what's going to make that community sell. So sometimes it's hard when you're talking about the amount of rooftops you have versus the density. Do we have enough space to allocate here? Or are you going to be willing to sell the other rooftops if you don't add some sort of community identity for the people that are going to live there? So it's really interesting, all the things that have to go into it. 'Cause
Sure.
you would just think, oh, master plan community, we have 50 acres, we're going to do X amount of
Oh, yeah.
homes, you know.
It can't always be just a density equation.
Yeah, it can't be a set it and send it kind of thing. Like,
Yeah.
oh, we're going to do exactly what we did here. I mean, it might work, but
Yeah, and there's different. Obviously, there's different goals for different stakeholders in that. So a lot of times when we're going through those plans, we'll start with big, what we call framework. Like, okay, we could put a few of these things here, and here's the really what this community is about, and here's how it layers out without having designed everything, just the big picture. And there will generally be 2 or 3 options of like how, and almost inevitably what happens is the discussion of those 2 or 3 options happens, and there's a little bit and piece of each one of them that gets melded into sort of the final framework that you begin to keep going. And those things all have to have flexibility too, because obviously as these master plan, we worked on, Steiner Ranch and Miller, and we've been involved in Easton Park and Headwaters. Those things don't get done in 5 years or 10 years. Sometimes it's 20 years. Sometimes it's, depending on the scale, it might be a 25-year build out, or more. So flexibility. So for us, it's like, okay, here's what we would like to see, and here's sort of the ideal scenario for 2020. But that's got a plan in it that says in 2025 we're going to reevaluate this, and some of these things may change.
it may change, yeah.
Whether it's amenity program or whether it's
Market-driven
product. Yeah.
changes,
Right.
lot sizes or product or whatever.
Well, and I feel like you'll have to have a great collaboration between the builders and developers in y'all's firm. I mean, what does that look like? I mean, I guess flexibility is one thing y'all mentioned, like having to be flexible, and I feel like, how do you get builders and developers to collaborate well with, I would say, y'all's vision and their vision? How do you mesh it?
Well, yeah, it's really ends up being a shared vision. Part of our real role in the process is to get with them at the beginning and kind of like, okay, you've got a list of needs to happen. That's generally some sort of financial return.
Right.
You've got a wish list of like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we did this? And we can come in and say, these things have worked or not worked so well because of X, Y, and Z, or the cost implication. You want that's going to skew your budget. And you go through all of those things and you walk away with like, okay, this is what we're really trying to do. And then you start kind of hammering out the details.
Right.
But it really is constant. We have a lot of our builder developer partners, collaborators that come into our office and talk to us without a specific project. They're like, hey, what are you guys seeing? And, oh, hey, we're looking at this land over here. I know you guys looked at that before. What are your thoughts on it? Just in general, like what highest and best use, without even getting fully into it. So it's a real, obviously we can't survive without them. They're part of our core business, and they need us. So it becomes, friendship, partnership, acquaintances. And then the longer you work with them, the more you get, well, these guys like to do it this way, and these other guys
and you build
like
trust, right?
Absolutely.
I
That's
feel like
huge.
good collaboration comes out of trust between the people you're working with.
Yeah. And I think that aligning expectations and communication channels from the very beginning helps that trust get built a lot faster. I mean, we have all this experience that we can lend to a project, but if it's not leaned on, then if we're being asked to be sort of like, more and more we're talking about financial challenges and different challenges that projects have. And I think the way to overcome those challenges is to have a good design up front, which takes some forethought and some involvement by a lot of this, all the stakeholders, as many as we can, from consultants, from civil, from the visual standpoint of the developer and the financial standpoint, I think RVi's strong suit is making the project a high power design, but also understanding how it works financially and maintenance wise. And what I mean by that is we've had projects that we collaborate with civil engineers and use the same dollars for amenities as for stormwater management, or, using the dollars wisely. You can't say, oh, okay, you can't do that after you've already kind of gone down the road of we're putting everything in a curb inlet and a pipe. You can't rewind that and say, okay, now we're going to do this in a more and if you say sustainability or you say resiliency or you say something like that, then that automatically kind of incurs a cost, a dollar sign in some people's heads, right? But I think if you thoughtfully design it up front and have a true collaboration, we can hit the wins financially, hit the wins for the community, hit the win.
Well, is there anything y'all are currently working on that you feel like this was a great example of thoughtful planning in this specific project?
Yeah, I think Shane's working on a project right now. That's a great
example. We're working on a project in near New Brunswick, out in the hill country, and part of the deal is, what's the draw? The draw is to be out in hill country. And in our minds, it was like, okay, so you're no longer in hill country if you come out and bulldoze everything, save a couple trees, put a bunch of houses up. Where's the hill country?
Right.
So, we were working with our client partner on strategic ways to preserve more open space.
Right.
So beyond just preserving that open space, as Peter mentioned, we're combining infrastructure, low water use, and maintenance and restoration of ecology. So we're going in there and actually scraping a bunch of we've gone through and mapped all the areas where the best topsoil is, and pre-development we're going in and pulling those to be able to put that great soil in key areas. Obviously, if it's going to be paved over or a house, you don't need to keep your good soil there. And Texas has a lot of good activity, but some of the soils are challenging. So it's really important to store those. And then that's going into restoring sort of more of the natural ecology. It's bringing back wildlife. And all this can sound sort of fluffy when you're a developer, but what really helped us get to this point, it was like, you're going to save X amount of money on water. You don't have to irrigate these pieces. They're going to look great. They're going to do these other things that can spur your development, and the whole development is leaning into this. Like, if you want to be here, it's because you care about Texas Hill Country. You're interested in preserving what's great about it, enhancing it even, and then tying that into the water use and the recharge, and then really the whole thing. Like, the Welcome Center is going to be, as opposed to just a sales center, as opposed to a sales center. Yeah. It's going to be an educational center. It's going to demonstrate how you collect water. It's going to very actively show a cistern and the water collection and how that can get reused. And it's going to have a whole area with more native plants that is almost like it is a demonstration garden to say, hey, you can use this in your lawn and you're going to reduce your water bill by X. And even so far as the agreements with services have really, which is good and a challenge, limited the amount of water that each lot is going to be able to have. So incorporating all these things isn't just, oh, that's so nice. It's fact, Texas,
we're becoming a necessity almost.
Running low on water. So we've got to take care of those things.
Yeah.
And that sort of does that thing that Peter was talking about, is triple or multiple stacking. We're providing recreational opportunities. We're lowering development costs. We're lowering maintenance costs. We're recharging water. You start to stack all those up and go, yeah, that's why we don't have houses on that 2 acres that you could probably put a house on. There's a reason for it. And that goes back to the client's spreadsheet at some point, and it works.
And it works. Well, especially, as much as like the storm last night, you're like, rain, bring all the rain in. This is great. But I don't think people really understand the severity of the water issue. I mean, I hate to bring it back to like California and the fires, but we've got to be smart about preserving the water because we are running low on it. Absolutely. And so it is probably more work, but in the long run too, it's going to save the person who owns the property money, but also it's going to help the entire ecosystem of preserving the water usage.
Yeah,
so
and
that's so interesting.
The best collaborations happen with the people who are staying with the project for that 20, 25 years. If it's a turn and burn kind of project, it's not as
challenging.
It's a little bit more challenging to fit those kinds of
Needs.
forethought types of things in.
Well, and I feel like, especially with the water issue, I feel like that type of community and plan is going to get approved very easily with whatever, municipality it's in, or county, or the city, whatever it is, because, hey, we can create more homes, but we're also going to create more homes that's going to use X amount of water usage. I feel like that would be like a home run hit to get approved if you're trying to create more homes.
Education on the all people involved, because it's not what we've always done.
Yeah.
Right? What we've always done is, cleared it and then landscaped it back to what looks sort of like nature, but it's nothing like it.
Right.
And it may never be.
So
that
are y'all
way
going to
again.
use like rainwater collection systems everywhere? I mean, what's the...
Yeah, and we're even in discussion. So this kind of ties into the collaboration part. We have had conversations with the developer, and they're inviting the NBU One Water program, which is talking about recharge and using the water. So, and several nonprofits. We're going to have a workshop. So the plan is generally in place. The master plan has been approved, but all the details are still being worked out as to like how this actually functions. And these groups have been in discussions with the client and RVi early to say, well, you could do this, how about this? So it really, to your point, gets buy off. And then in those situations where we're going back to ask for, our stormwater permit, we're treating it a little bit differently. And sometimes that, at the agency, it's like, wait a minute, that's not the standard thing. Yes, but here's why this works. And, we have all these different agencies and people on board. It just makes that process, it doesn't always go faster, but it gives you a better chance of getting there in the end. So that's been super exciting. And that's kind of the trend of, one of the other trends is whether it's environmental and engineering, or whether it's meeting, like we've had some projects that we meet very early with either the city or, the business development group of the area, and talk about, what are the key things that everybody still says are missing? It's grocery store, it's whatever, and try to figure out how to combine those in a plan. So getting that information from everybody is really paramount.
Yeah, it has to be. Well, and I feel like for you, this is something very different and unique, but I feel like you have to evolve with the times and the demands and or the restrictions that, just life in the world is putting on you. And I feel like if we want to make progress, you're going to have to pivot at some point.
Yeah.
Which just seems like a huge pivot, right?
You said you can't expect to do the same thing and expect different results. And I think, in some ways, the banks and certain engineers and everybody wants to do, because it's the easy button, right? Because we've already done it. Like transportation is a good example of that kind of stuff. But yeah, we can't keep doing it the same way. It's not gonna work.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm Brandon Sparks with Nautilus Lending, based right here in Central Texas. We're a full-service mortgage operation and brokerage, serving Greater Texas as well as Florida and Tennessee. One of the greatest things about our shop is our ability to facilitate creative financing. What that means is that anything legally possible, we can get it funded. You want to find out more? Reach out to us, www.nautiluslending.com. That's www.nautiluslending.com.
I mean, I feel like you've kind of answered my next question for y'all is like trends that you see shaping kind of the community, master plan communities over the next 5 to 10 years, which I feel like basically getting creative with how to create communities that are more sustainable,
I think part of that is finding different ways to fund things. There's some legislature going now to add things to MUDs that weren't in MUD reimbursables before, like thermal energy, or maybe that'll extend to stormwater treatment with natural ways instead of pipes. I mean, I'm not sure how they would calculate that. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe you have a better answer, Shane, on, if we use the landscape to filter water instead of a pond and pipes, they should get reimbursed through the mud through that, just the same as if it were traditional stormwater management. So
Yeah.
I think, those sort of trends of heading in that direction might get some traction.
Yeah. I mean, I think they're going to have to, you
Yeah.
know, unless we get just a tsunami of water. I mean, influx coming in, It
Yeah.
felt like it last night.
There's mixed water coming on around too. I think the discussions around drilling for brackish water and mixing that with effluent, maybe gray water in the homes, and maybe the only water that's potable that comes to our house is the water we actually consume internally, and then the rest of it is some kind of reuse water. Either that's
probably be a
Yeah.
little controversial.
And that's
but
an
yeah.
interesting thing. That same client on the project was, when we had this roundtable group with the other discussions, they're like, hey, you can do a dual plumbing system in your house, right? So wastewater and all that stuff goes one place, and dishwater, shower, all that stuff goes another place that can be reused. So on your lot, and this is getting real granular and detailed, on each individual lot, if you captured the rainwater on your house, if you captured the condensation, because we're running our ACs 10 months out of the year, maybe 12, that ends up being a lot of water. So that can be used on site, on your yard to irrigate. And then the other stuff goes to a treatment that actually goes through the treatment process that gets redistributed to the community in the like parks and open space after it's been treated. So there's a lot of, looking, it hasn't obviously been perfected yet, but like, how do you reduce or close? I don't know if you're ever going to close it, but reduce that water loop. Like Peter said, all you're getting in from the potable city or well water is, what you're drinking and what you're using, and the rest of it just continues to recycle. So that's pretty exciting. And, obviously, Dripping Springs had a development moratorium because of maybe a few other things, but water was the big portion of it. And you're going to, it's inevitable that you're going to keep seeing those things.
If we don't change something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, this is probably, I feel like something that you guys, and we kind of touched on it with AI tech, enabled design and sustainability becoming more mainstream, where I feel like everyone feels like they can get their hands on it. How are you guys at RVi leaning into it? Leaning into the innovation of AI with your business.
Yeah. I mean, we're always looking for new ways. We have even a firm-wide committee sort of looking every day at different ways we can use it. We were already implemented pretty early on, proposals, meeting minutes, those kinds of things that, take up time they don't need to take up anymore. And recently we've been inspired by AI generated prompts that give us imagery for a presentation, but where we still, I think, need some work, or AI, or we need to still discover ways of getting that from an inspirational image to a constructible image that's, constructible by, it's not there. And the other part that's not with AI is that the contextual, the human touch, the relationship to the land, the relationship to adjacent projects, the relationship to that. And I don't think it's smart enough yet to figure out. I mean, that's part of why we still have jobs, I guess.
Well, yeah, I don't think it's ever going to be smart enough to really take they're not going to. This is the thing, is you guys have the experience and the knowledge of what's worked and what's not. There's that human aspect of it. But I kind of mean more AI leaning into the things that are super, I don't want to say minuscule, but in y'all's business, right? There has to be things that are almost just like busy work for you guys that could help automate things pretty quickly. Like, for example, I know this is nothing comparable, but I think of like a marketing slogan for some sort of broker open house we're going to do. I mean, I tap it into AI and I'm like, great, here's my slogan, done. My write-up is here. It's done, and it takes me 1 minute versus me thinking and collaborating for 30 minutes on how I'm going to be witty with my tagline. But I also mean just like in the basic some of the basic stuff that can help your business. I was just curious if y'all have leaned into AI for any of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, like specifically code review. Like, you know, we work in so many different locations, and each municipality has its own little tweak on whatever. Some max lengths are 700, some 750, some, and I don't remember all of them from all the places, right? So one of the best, or I don't know about best, one of the most useful things is to be able to feed that stuff in, and we have certain prompts for like, what out of these 500 pages of code and mumbo jumbo do we really need to know? And boom.
Amazing.
A quick summary. And it's also good in terms of being able to get comps, like of other projects. What did they provide? Sometimes we can get sales information, sometimes not. Question the quality of some of that. But you can get enough information that would have taken you literally searching and looking and writing it down and going to each website.
Right.
So those kind of time savers are great, because we talk about this all the time. It's like, you know, what can we do in our life to get to the real doing and creating and thinking, where we're providing value versus the busy work. So we're definitely leaning into those things, and even some of the imagery collection and prompts, you know, not necessarily trying to create the new thing based on what we're designing, but just say, hey, give me a bunch of examples of, you know, park with a shade structure, with a negative edge pool, with whatever, and boom, instead of having to search through that, you can get a piece that's enough for you to use to start the conversation. Because we're not trying to say, we prompted this in and here's our design. We're just trying to say, here's a shortcut to
what we are
discussing.
It'll look
dialogue
similar
starter. Conversation starter.
Well, and that's what I mean. It's work smarter, not longer, right?
Exactly.
But where you guys will be irreplaceable, that's where I think AI comes in to get some of that. I don't want to say mundane, but just the busy work out of the way, to where you can get to where you guys actually bring the value. And that's where I feel like AI is so, I feel like so many people are scared of AI, which I feel like some people might need to be depending on their job. But there is a part that AI will never replace. But to me, I think work smarter, not longer. So if AI can help do things for us in a way that is just busy work or a time suck, and it's like, why we shouldn't be scared of it, we should embrace it. But I mean, from my point of view, I don't think AI is going to be able to replace what you guys do, because it is it needs to be analyzed, it needs to be stripped down, it needs to be collaboration, it needs to be worked through, it needs to be discussed, it needs to be analytically. I mean, there's so many facets of it. I can't imagine AI replacing what you guys do anytime soon.
There's other technologies that we're using, like augmented reality and different things. So like, we can go on a site and, you know, hold up the iPad and make changes to the plans, because you know, it's right behind it.
Which
with
is
the
amazing.
owner right there. It's just that sort of saves a lot of time. It's not AI, but it's still a quicker way to get a reaction. If you say, hey, client, let's meet on the site. We'll go over the plans. We'll look at a vertical elevation of your amenities site. We'll look at the view shed of where we thought this picturesque view would be, and we can make adjustments right then and there and get off and go.
That's actually pretty amazing.
It's really been awesome. We've been doing this for a while, and you know, back in the day, you used to have to either get an engineer to go out and like stake corners of where the building was and what it was, so you could figure out what your view was exactly, because obviously you work on a plan and there's all these other information, and that was a cumbersome process. And then you might get out there and be like, oh, well, you didn't get this point or that point or that point. So you'd walk around and go, feels like it's about right here. Is this, you know,
that tree is this one, that tree is that one.
Yeah, now, you know, you have that map on your iPad and you're like, we are standing right here next to this tree that shows right here. This is what we're looking at. Oh my gosh, I didn't know there was a manufacturing plant in what I thought was a great view. Yeah, we need to do this or whatever. And being able to do that, or at least document that and have everybody look at it and agree upon it, versus going back, getting your photos together, writing a memo, doing a thing, sending it out, waiting for, you know, it's like the speed of things happened a lot quicker. And, you know, sometimes that's great. Most of the times that's great. Sometimes you're like, I wish I had that stall of a few minutes so I could think about it a little bit more before we have to come up with it.
Two-day FedEx used to be great.
Right.
I know, right? For sure.
Oh, we didn't get it out today. We're going to send it out tomorrow. Another minute.
I need one more
We're
minute.
dating ourselves with FedEx.
I know. Well, you know, what's interesting is we had a client, they, you know, from a residential aspect, they extended their driveway. We had to cut into all of this cleachy mud and just rock wall, and it was a much bigger project than we intended, but we created so much more space. But now we have this huge retaining wall, and of course the seller asked us, hey, can you come up with a design of what this could look like? And AI came in real handy because they wanted something quick. So instead of me going out to somebody, having them come out to the property, take a look, go back, CAD design something, you know, that would have taken, you know, probably at least a week or 2 weeks to find somebody and money. You just go into AI and you say, I have a
Here's the
50 by 60 foot concrete wall that's 15 feet high, blah, blah, blah. You give them the dimensions. And it came up with, and I was like, stone wall, what designs can be made with it? And it was clearly not the exact, like, it's not going to look like the exact thing, but it at least did a very... They could see a concept. Oh, I could do a basketball court. I could do a pickleball court on this extended pad of driveway. And it was done within, literally, I asked for it, and 24 hours later, we sent them a design. So, sorry, those are the people's jobs I'm a little nervous for. But, I mean, at the end of the day, clearly, if they wanted something really custom, AI probably wouldn't be able to do something as specific as they want. But I do think AI is great, and it's something that people are going to lean into. But I was curious how is it affecting your business? But it seems like, if anything, it's kind of helping y'all a little bit.
At the moment. There might be
Peter,
a time
at
when
the moment.
there might be a time when
I think it's really just another evolution of tools, right? Like everybody, when CAD first came out, oh no, this is going to ruin everything. And people got used to it, and then that turned into 3D stuff, and people are like, oh no, and I got used to that. So it's figuring out how to use the tools at your disposal. It is and is going to continue to change the way we work. Our hope and the positive spin on it is it's going to allow us to figure things out in a greater level of detail quicker. And the other big thing is it allows us to communicate and express that. Like you said, you did a prompt and it was like, did this. So to do that and be like, oh, I wasn't really understanding what you meant, or your sketch was like, in my mind, I know exactly what that is. The sketch is a little like, what is that really? You know, unless you spend a lot of time on it. So those are great ways to communicate.
Prompt crafting.
I
have to be
love
better.
That's going to be
prompt crafters.
Yeah, I think I saw something that like careers in the next 20 years, and that was one of the things.
That's crazy.
Like, figure out how to coach people into how to get the information that you want out of AI.
I heard somebody the other day say they asked AI how to ask them the question that they were trying to figure out.
That's crazy. It's crazy, but I mean, it's, and like you said, like there's always going to be something new coming out, but there's still something so unique about what you guys do. I mean, y'all have created a very successful company. Y'all are now in how many different places? You said you're started in Central Texas, but you guys are in other states now, correct?
We have 13 offices in 6 states: California, Colorado, Arizona, Texas, Florida, North Carolina.
We're not in Iowa yet?
No.
What are you thinking of?
We can serve, we have licenses and expertise to serve across the country.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, y'all have done a really great job of, I feel like, curating something that is unique when it comes to the planning and landscape architecture, development of master plan communities. So what advice would you give those young planners or developers listening, kind of what advice about creating spaces that matter? Because that's what's going to set them apart from everyone else. So what advice would you give them?
I had a couple of things. I mean, we actually, Shane and I are sort of mentors of the office, I guess you can, of the young folks, younger folks. Go to the sites that you're designing for, and understand the context in person if you can. Obviously, we can't always go to Iowa for a project if we're
Yeah.
working on a project in Iowa. But go to the sites and then think of your job as a career. I mean, you got into this as a career, so look for ways to build your career in your office. Find a good mentor, chase a good mentor. You know, just own the work that you do, and you know, if you have a question, ask it. You know, so
Yeah.
go to the sites, continuing your education. I mean, 5 years is not enough to learn a lifetime of stuff to get to where, you know, you're understanding the level of things that, you know, we do. And then you know, use the people around you to extend your education. I don't know if that's not unique to our career. I think that's just a young.
Well, I think you made
people.
a good point about go to the spaces
Yeah.
that you're going to be creating, because it's one of the things that's really unique about you guys is your collaboration and creating places that matter, that are thoughtful and livable and desirable. But I feel like that was a great piece of advice. Go to the places that you're creating.
And go to places that excite you.
Yeah.
I think that's another one.
Get
I mean, travel.
inspiration.
Yeah, because and soak it in.
Travel's
Like
huge.
sometimes when we travel, you know, I'm sure you do the same. We're taking pictures of stupid stuff that our family is like, "Why are you even
Yeah.
looking at that?" But it's, you know, it's details or sight lines or things that make the place that we're in. Like you have certain feelings and emotions when you come to a well-designed space or place, right? You're not sure what it is every time, but it is something. And sometimes people like with training in it can kind of hone in on what that was and,
Right.
and try and take a picture and maybe incorporate that into some project when it's
Right.
important.
I love that. I love that. What about you, Shane?
Yeah, I think even more than the specifics, I would just advise everybody to be open and be a sponge. Like have a way, but not necessarily a map. Our profession is really, really diverse. Like you can do so many things, from ecological stuff to high-end roof gardens to, you know, forestry to regional master plans to master, like it is really, really, really broad. So, you know, when you get out of school, even when you're in school, I would just be open to, like, your career is probably going to take some turns because you have to try these things before you're interested. Like I started out my career in specific, more like park design, because that's what I thought I wanted to do. And then it grew more to bigger things of like, why is this park like this? Oh, the planner did this, and this. I said, oh, I want to do that because I want that to be better. And then, you know, it expands. So just to, I think the biggest thing is to be open, and then always try to infuse a little bit of your own personality into whatever you're doing. You know, there's going to be an expected deliverable or product or whatever you're supposed to do, but what can you juice into that, or what can you sprinkle with a little extra love that makes it like, oh, that's you that added something to that, as opposed to just, I did what you asked me to do and here's your deal. You know, we're always challenging our staff to like go a little bit further. Ask the question outside your box. Like, okay, you're supposed to do this, but ask the question about why these other things are happening, because like we've been talking about, it's kind of a theme, right? There's so many inputs and so many different things. So don't focus too narrowly. Just open that up and try to do as much as you can.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you guys would know because y'all really, I mean, it's impressive what you guys have created. So if people wanted to learn more about RVi's work or connect with you guys directly, I guess just y'all's website, go visit your website. That's where you would be if you want to talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, we have. We're on Instagram. RVi Planning is
Yeah.
the way you can find us almost anywhere. You can Google it. You know, my email address is pdufrene at rviplanning.com. That's planning, 2 N's, not a T.
I
Not
love
planting.
that. Planning, not planting. Even though we do help people create stuff that they can plant in those areas.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's been very interesting, and I love that, you know, you guys have created something very special. And I think you have a lot of big projects behind you
For sure.
to totally support y'all's reputation. And And I think you guys are doing great work. So I'm excited to see what you guys are going to do. So thank you for sitting down today with us.
Of course.
Appreciate the
Really
time.
it.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you both, Shane and Peter. And that's all we got. Thanks for listening.